Founders College is a 4-year undergraduate college, liberal arts and business, specifically designed to train students to think critically and communicate well. Our Thursday evening lecture series gives our students, our faculty, members of our administration, and also members of the South Boston, Virginia community an opportunity to interact with a wide range of experts representing many, many fields. Tonight, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Scott Adams, whose topic is the psychological value of a self-concept. Dr. Scott Adams has taught undergraduate psychology courses and special topics in psychological treatments to students, mental health clinicians, and primary care physicians and nurses in over 20 states. The courses include Introduction to Psychology, Personality Theory, Clinical Behavioral Observation, and Therapeutic Interviewing and Assessment. He earned his PsyD from Indiana State University. His clinical specialties include psychotic disorders, depression, combat-related post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, and personality assessment. One of Dr. Adams' strengths is his real-world experience in multiple aspects of the profession of psychology. He's able to present an integrated and understandable perspective on psychology that spans theory, clinical practice, research, administration, and professional trends in the field. Unlike the classes that are taught at Founders College, the content of our Thursday night lecture series represents the personal views of the speaker and not necessarily represents the views of Founders College. Dr. Adams tonight will be talking, as I mentioned, about the psychological view of self-concept. And here are some of the questions that he'll be answering. What is a self-concept? What does it do for an individual? How does it develop? And what are its bases in reality? What is the difference between a rational and an irrational self-concept? What role does your self-concept play in mental health and illness? Without further ado, I introduce Dr. Scott Adams.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to speak with you tonight about the psychological value of self-concept. Tamara has listed the questions that were described in the advertisement for this talk, so I don't need to run through those again. But there's obviously a lot of other questions that you could ask about self-concepts and why they're valuable. And I hope that everyone feels free to raise questions during the Q&A section at the end of the talk, especially if I haven't covered something that you have an interest in during the talk itself. In addition to the concepts of consciousness and free will, the self-concept is one of the most fundamental and important in understanding psychology. However, in order to clearly describe why a self-concept is valuable and important to understand, it's best to begin by showing its importance. For this, I'll offer a brief description of a woman who entered psychotherapy and her presenting problem. Now, I should note this is not a person that I saw in psychotherapy, and the case comes from a book called Status Dynamics, Creating New Paths to Therapeutic Change. The clinical case from the book very much suits the purpose of this talk, which is why I use it here. So here's the description of the woman who entered psychotherapy and her presenting problem. Sharon, which is a pseudonym, a 37-year-old special education teacher, related as her presenting concern that she felt exploited and taken for granted by her husband, Jim. She stated that Jim's attitude toward her was not one in which she was viewed and treated as an equal partner, but rather one in which he regarded her as a menial who could take care of all the day-to-day mundane tasks while he pursued a career in academic research. Now, Sharon's attempts to achieve equal status, respect, and appreciation from her husband had taken two basic and repetitive forms in the course of their 5 years of marriage. Her essential strategy had been, quote, to try to be a good wife, close quote. Now, this entailed, in her view, assuming virtually all of the family responsibilities on top of her own full-time job, demanding little of her husband, and trying in many ways to maintain the smooth harmony at home that he considered vital to success in his career. However, she related, Jim's reaction seemed to be to merely accept this as his due. Now, Sharon's other basic tactic had been to confront her husband angrily from time to time about his attitude and behavior. This generally resulted in a fierce counterattack on his part and bitter conflict between the two of them over prolonged periods of time. It did not, however, achieve any improvement in her marital situation. At the time of the clinical intake, Sharon feared that her position was a hopeless one. Aside from the rather dreaded and personally unacceptable option of divorce, which she was seriously considering, she viewed herself as thoroughly victimized by her husband and as helpless to change their relationship in such a way that she could feel a valued, respected, and equal partner with him. Okay, so this is the presentation, and this is the reported issue that Sharon brought into therapy with her. I have 3 questions. Can we gather from these facts, or at least reasonably speculate, what Sharon's self-concept is? Second, is her self-concept actively involved in these events, or is it really just an afterthought, a general label she applies to herself on the basis of these events over which she has no control? And third, is her self-concept changeable, or is it fixed, meaning unchangeable? Hold your answers in mind as we'll come back to these questions. In the meantime, I'd like to try and answer all 3, as well as the questions that Tamara listed at the beginning, by examining the answer to a more fundamental question. What is a self-concept? In order to answer this question, it's necessary to first define one part of that term, the self. What is the self? Or, what is your self?